Good evening and welcome to the People's Business. I'm Stacey Russell. Crop over started in the late 1700s as a celebration among the plantation workers on the successful completion of the sugar cane harvest. This was when Barbados was the world's leading sugar cane producer. These original crop over celebrations tapered off in the 1940s as sugar production declined. The rebirth of crop over in the 1970s was primarily aimed at leveraging Barbadian culture to boost economic activity, specifically to stimulate tourist arrivals during the slow summer months. Decades on, the question is sometimes asked whether crop over is still a cultural exposition or whether it has become mainly a commercial activity. Tonight, that's the consideration on our topic, crop over, culture and commerce. To discuss this are Bryan Worrell, President of the Barbados Association of Masqueraders and Bandleaders, and Eddy Abed, Chairman of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry's Bridgetown Revitalisation Committee. Unfortunately, Chief Cultural Officer Andrea Wells, who was scheduled to be with us, had to withdraw due to illness. We'll dive into the discussion after a short commercial break. Welcome back to the People's Business. Tonight we're discussing Crop Over, the sweetest summer festival, culture and commerce. And we have Mr. Bryan Worrell and Mr. Eddy Abed in studio with us. Gentlemen, my first question is, do you agree that there is a link between Barbados's Crop Over and commercial activity? And what do you perceive to be that link? Who wants to go first?
I'll dive in. Without doubt, the two are very, very much linked. Your opening remarks about having an event in the summer to drive tourism and commercial activity could not be more spot on. And that's been the success of the festival, that the commercial side of Crop Over recognized that this could boost sales, that this could be a big impetus to get people here. And rather than it just being a copy of a Trinidad carnival, that we needed to ensure that it had its own culture, that in fact it was a standalone event that could take shape and build year after year, but grounded in that. And we all remember Burn Mr. Harding, we remember the original start of Crop Over, and it has now morphed into a much larger festival. There are many aspects of it. We'll talk more about this later on in the show, but the music side, the fete side has become a very, very important part, and the commercial side has tried to facilitate as the festival has grown. So we stand ready. Obviously, we see this as a huge opportunity, and without question, the members in the chamber all participate aggressively during the festival.
Mr. Worrell, you own a band, well, three of them actually, but you're here tonight representing the Association of Barbados Masqueraders and Bandleaders, speaking on their behalf. What are your perspectives?
Well, to agree with Eddy and what Eddy said, but there's also an avenue for creatives to monetize their talents. We got to look at the Crop Over Festival as that type of avenue for people that want to come out and that have the creative talent to create costumes, to create other forms of craft. There are other things that go on in the festival, not only just the masquerade element, but the festival is wider than that. There's also opportunities for persons in different sectors to also monetize during the Crop Over Festival. So every event that we were talking about earlier, every event there's hair to do, there's nails to do, there's clothes to buy, there's retail. Everything gets a boost during the Crop Over Festival season. So what we want to maintain, and from our aspect, we want to maintain the cultural aspect of Crop Over. We also have to be very cognizant of the fact that it drives the economy during the summer months.
But it brings me to ask, to what extent is Crop Over weighted towards the aspect of culture as opposed to making money?
I think the two are intertwined. I don't think you can separate one from the other. I think that if you're looking at the creative aspect, you're looking at the cultural aspect, the traditional aspect of what Crop Over is, we still have to maintain that because that's the base for the festival, right? So the festival is built on top of the tradition. But in anything that has to have a long life, as Crop Over has, it has to be generating some sort of finances. It has to be driving some sort of economic growth for it to keep happening year after year. If it wasn't, then it wouldn't be still here. So I don't think we can separate culture from finance. I think the two have to be pretty much in bed together to make this thing work.
Okay, so what would you say are really the authentic cultural elements of Crop Over?
We look at Barbadiana. We look at what makes Barbados. We look at the people. We look at the history. So persons that would do, for instance, in Masquerade for Grand Kaduma, they will look at, and even Junior Kaduma that we saw yesterday, they'll look at different elements. They can look at songs. They can look at persons that made different types of contributions to building Barbados as a country. And you can build themes off of those things. So the cultural aspect and using certain materials, you can use materials that are here in Barbados. You can find things distinct to Barbados and only found here to make your themes and to build on. So we have a lot of history here in Barbados that we use every year to portray on the stages and the streets that you see every year.
Okay, I want to now talk about the link between Crop Over and revitalizing Bridgetown. You're here representing the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and you're the chair of the Bridgetown Revitalization Committee. Just 2 weeks ago at the launch of Crop Over, it was actually in Bridgetown, taken to Queen's Park. How did people in the city, the business people in the city, react to that?
So your question is not a simple yes or no question. There's several shades of gray in there. So let me just try to, in a nutshell, tell you my thoughts on this. Anything that we as Barbadians, we as citizens of this country can attract into Bridgetown augurs well for the country. It is our capital. It is an attractive place. Yes, it has problems. There's no question it has problems. And I could sit here and name the few that I've been told time after time. It's dirty, not enough parking, there's no entertainment, there's no food in the city, and we're well aware of this. But the commerce side of Bridgetown has always been driven by footfall. So retail goes where there's footfall. It's a very simple equation. The less footfall we've had in Bridgetown, when 2,000 government jobs were moved out, I assure you, within 5 years, we saw 1,000 businesses close in Bridgetown. And this is service businesses as well as small mom and pop retailers closed because they no longer had the footfall. We then started to build on the tourism aspect of Bridgetown. We're next to the Bridgetown port. You come to Bridgetown during the season, I don't care what day you come, and there are 2 or 3 of these liners in the port, you see people almost like drones walking along the waterfront, going straight to one of those bars that they can lie there for 40 Bajan, 20 US. They get a rum and coke and they get to lie on a lounge for the whole day. And that is the extent of the money that's being spent in Bridgetown. The retailers are not attracting them. I'm saying all of this because when it's difficult, it becomes more difficult to sell to tourists, you need to go back to your core market. We have been unable in Bridgetown to attract new retailers. We have so much vacant space in Broad Street, our prime street, because the quality, the better end of the market does not perceive Bridgetown as being the place to locate their businesses.
If we were to focus on crop over, how do you see crop over spurring business
So I'm
in the
coming
city?
to that. So during the crop over season, apart from locals who also come into the city because there's Bridgetown Market, there's some craft markets that pop up in Freedom Square. There have been several things that happen. I can tell you at least twice in the lead up to crop over, DJs come into Bridgetown and play the current music. So it attracts people. There's a very festive side. Some retailers get costume bands to bring some of their people into the stores, again to hype it, and also at the same time to attract potential customers to come to their band. So it does attract from that point of view.
You mentioned Bridgetown Market, but Bridgetown Market is actually now held on the Mighty Griner Highway, which is not in the heart of Bridgetown. Should we bring it back there?
If you're asking me, I'd love to see it back in the city. The city is designed for retail. It is a perfect grid. It lends itself to retail. There's lots of parking, especially if you do it on a Sunday or something where there's no activity. The Mighty Griner Highway poses several problems, least of which is that they don't have a regular bus service going there. So it really is a problem to get there, then leave from there. But yes, I would like to see it back in the city. But I just want to continue along the train of thought that although Bridgetown would be one of those that would benefit from commercial activity, let's not forget the entire country benefits from the commercial activity. And I have to wear two hats there because we've seen commercial activity increase certainly for the month of July and into the week or 2 weeks after the event because people are still lingering. Stores are busy, taxis are busy, all of the distributors who sell food and liquor and so on are busy. So it really does capture a large swathe of what's going on. Not to mention that the small vendors, and there's several of them on Swan Street I personally know, are selling jewelry, are selling other bits and bobs that people come and will, hopefully they have the opportunity to pitch it to them. So it really is a great opportunity to increase the activity, predominantly in Bridgetown, but throughout the country in general.
Okay. And what would you say is the value of crop over to Barbados besides raking in the dollars?
Raking in the dollars is always important, but I think that it's still, the crop over festival still, we are on the map. There's something called carnival season. There are carnivals everywhere, right? As they're more and more popping up in different parts of the world. But we've got to look at crop over as something different. We have to sell crop over as something unique to Barbados. We have to bring out, and that's why the traditional element of crop over is so important, because it tells the story for the visitor that comes in that doesn't know anything about Barbados or the history that much. And if they come around bands and they try to find a band, they will find things that are portrayed in bands and so on. So maintaining the traditional aspect and of crop over for us is very important because it is something that we can sell Barbados on.
Is it really authentic in this modern time? Barbados is crop over. We have seen the party bands, in particular those big ones, featuring those costumes that you see in any carnival around the world, with the feathers and the beads, moving away from our traditional costume making. So how authentic is our crop over, especially on that Grand Kadooment
But
day?
it changes. I mean, with everything there's change, and there's a seller's and a buyer's market that we're in. So someone in the market that does what you would say more commercial band, the things that sell that you see more at the traditional around different carnivals, those would be the more popular, bigger size bands that are selling that just the carnival experience and the jumping experience. But we still do have a market here, which I think we need to pay some more attention to, which is the traditional element, which sells a different type of costume, is for a different type of reveler. And we do have, you know, different ages of visitors that come in for the Crop Over Festival. You have families that are returning nationals that come in every summer. So you get from the grandmothers, aunties, different people coming back, and they don't have the same taste. They have different tastes. So where an older Eddy might want to jump in something with a little more coverage to cover a little more little spots, you know, then they're the younger generation that, you know, they're more free. So each demographic has something that we, the band leaders, try to put on that everybody can kind of fit into.
But you would agree that many of those costumes for the party bands, they're being imported. And this seems to be alienating the people, the artisans, who have the gift, who have the expertise in creating those traditional costumes, the designers, the wire benders, and so forth. What is your response to that?
I don't agree. I know that there are different elements in costuming where you have different options. So again, it's businesses that these brand leaders are running. So for their particular brand, they will do what is economically savvy for them. If it's cheaper for them to wholesale outside and import, then they take advantage of some of the concessions that we get as cultural practitioners also to make it a little more reasonable to get those things. And the hope is that it drives the prices down, because if we can keep the cost down, we can offer the product at the market at a cheaper, more affordable price. So the two things go hand in hand. Now the artisans here, I know they're wire benders. I personally use local wire benders. I use local swimwear manufacturers. We don't have some of the raw materials here. We still have to import those. But we have people on the ground from the largest bands to the smallest. They all have production houses. They all have to either make featherwear, do some bedazzling on swimwear. You know, there are things that all the artisans do get, and there is a need for more craftsmen in the industry too.
Okay. On that note, we're taking a break, and we're coming right back with more of The People's Business.
Hey there, it's Mahalia. I want to share something that might be really helpful. If you're feeling anxious, overwhelmed, depressed, or lonely and have no one to talk to, call Lifeline Barbados. We all face struggles at times in our lives. You're not alone. There's no need to feel ashamed or embarrassed. It's okay to reach out for support. Lifeline Barbados is completely confidential. No one else will know you called. They're there to offer a caring ear and guidance without judgment. And fellas, I want you to know asking for help is a true sign of strength. It takes real courage to reach out. You can also call Lifeline Barbados if you're worried about loved ones who are struggling and you need advice on how to support them. There's a saying, a problem shared is a problem halved, but not everyone has someone they can confide in. That's why Lifeline Barbados exists, to be there for you or someone you care about during tough times. Save this number. Lifeline Barbados is just a call away. Remember, you can reach out whenever you need to talk.
Welcome back to The People's Business. The People's Business. Tonight, we are discussing Crop Over. I'm so excited about Crop Over. I'm getting tongue-tied. And it's about the culture and the commerce of Crop Over that we're discussing tonight. And we have Mr. Bryan Worrell. He is the president of the Barbados Association of Masqueraders and Bandleaders. And we also have Mr. Eddy Abed, who is representing the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and specifically the Bridgetown Revitalisation Committee of the BCCI. We have a caller on the line, and we're going to take that call before we continue with our discussion. Good night, caller. Kindly go ahead.
A very good night to you all. I was at home this evening. Coincidentally, this is what happened. The lady asked me about Crop Over. She said she's not satisfied with the depiction in the bands as the years gone by. And then I highlighted quickly Winston Jordan and Miss the lady Gwyneth Squires, etc. Her concern is that depiction of the old cultural as we had known it is sort of diminished. And all she said is about feathers and skimpy and this and that. Incidentally, I was watching the yesterday young people, the children's kiddies, and I saw a bit of depiction with something like cane on his little children's shoulders and things. That's the sort of thing she was referring to. But that is apparently missed in these recent years. And on to Mr. Abed, revitalization, sir, has been touted for so many years now. I've been talking real long. And now you hear revitalization, and nothing is had. For instance, sir, you can imagine I went on Bassett Road the night this week. You know, dead as in D-A-day, day. Now, revitalization isn't about that. I can rest assured. But I'm not here to put anybody on the spot. But listen to the responses, and I know something's got to be taken on board to boost both revitalization and depiction. Those two words are vital to crop over. I mean, you hear about $80 million gross when the year comes. That's debatable also. I regard you all.
Thank you. Do you have any specific responses to the caller?
Supply and demand. The truth is that the demand for the typical costumes of the Gwyneth Squires and the Winston Jordans, may they both rest in peace, it's not in demand anymore. It's a different type of individual who's playing mass now. And I got to tell you, even back in the days of Winston Jordan and Gwyneth Squires, unless they won prize money, they would lose. Their businesses lost money. They did it because of the love for the business. They did it because they had a select group of people that followed them year after year after year and wanted to play that. But the size of their bands through the years got smaller and smaller because that type of band was no longer in demand. And I agree. I personally love to go to the stadium when it used to be a stadium and see it on Kadooment morning and enjoy it. And I sometimes become a little bit frustrated that all I see is beads and feathers. And I see what the caller is talking about. But the reality is, in an environment where people say, I want to be able to show a little bit more skin, or I want to enjoy the fets leading up to Kadooment, or I want to, participate, bring in somebody, I want to hear them at a big outing that I can enjoy it. That the people who do these events have to move in that direction to be able to satisfy their clientele. Yes, there are people who want what was done in the past, but sadly, it's getting smaller and smaller. And I just, as a businessman, I think you have to listen to your customers, and I think the Bandleaders are doing that.
So just to add on to what you said, so a cousin of mine sent me a picture on WhatsApp late last night or early this morning, can't remember which. She was jumping in 1982.
Oh boy.
All right? Junior Kadooment, 1982. And the costumes that I saw in the picture in 1982, I saw some very similar costumes yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? I say that to say that you have to evolve with things. So as much as I know people are comfortable with what was in the past, the market and where we have to sell our products now is demanding something different. So you would find that although there are still traditional bands and people need to just research and find them, but there still are traditional bands out there that are doing not just the feathers and the bees, but they're telling stories still through their costumes. But you will find that those bands are small because there's not an attraction there now. So the persons that are interested in revelry and masquerade aren't looking for those costumes anymore.
You've just said that the photograph that you saw from the 80s was somewhat similar to what we saw just yesterday. So perhaps the festival is being preserved with the juniors
Definitely
junior
is.
Kadooment,
Definitely is. It definitely
and not
is.
necessarily
I can
with the
tell you-
older people.
I can tell you from yesterday, I rewatched the entire Junior Kadooment from beginning to end today while I was working, and I can tell you that there was a lot of storytelling. There was tributes to Gwyneth Squires, to Jackie Opal. There was a lot of traditional Barbados themes, sugarcane themes. You know, they told stories about all aspects of Barbadian history.
I hear what you're saying about the demand of the adult clientele, but why can't this be carried over with the adults?
Because it's a different market. So, okay, so over the years, the Grand Kadooment event would have changed in terms of the number of local revelers in a ratio to imported revelers, right? But now that has changed. There's such a high demand, or the demand is driven now by the overseas revelers coming in. So sometimes you get more overseas revelers actually paying for costumes than locals, right? So what they're coming to experience here is not necessarily the traditional mask. That's where the Bajan populace would have kept that tradition going, because they're the ones that primarily look for those costumes.
But can you influence them with your marketing strategy? For instance, say, we are selling Barbadian culture.
And there's nothing wrong with that. We even had conversations up to this year about maybe some of the larger party bands even implementing a costume-driven tours, you know, a Barbadian theme, you know, something about the history of Barbados, stuff like that, to kind of still tie in the traditional element. And for most of the band leaders were on board with that. They don't have a problem with tying in at least a traditional, and not necessarily a traditional in the sense of what you think a traditional costume looks like. Because they say traditional and party, but we all party. Nobody's marching, right? We all come on the road to party, but it's just that the costumes tell different stories.
And to be fair, if I could just jump in for a minute, we've been focusing on the larger party bands, but there are many community bands that participate in Grand Kadooment that do just that. They bring out the local themes, the traditional themes, and they show it. They just unfortunately don't have the numbers. So where these large party bands may have, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500 people, they have 250. So you don't get a sense that it's out there, but they are. So it still exists, but albeit in a much smaller amount of bands or people in that particular band showing that theme.
And I'm glad that you have mentioned this now, because I did intend to ask about the level of involvement with the bands within the communities. For instance, Northern Mass, that won many prizes last year, they're very much a community-based band. But to what extent are the other bands getting involved in the community to help to preserve the culture, pass on the craft?
There's been a shift kind of from the past. They had many more community bands. Haynesville, Deacons had a community band. Bush Hall had a band. There were a lot of different communities around Barbados that had bands. But again, the financing around it, the difficulty in being able to produce it, you need funds, you need capital to do those things. And if it doesn't get the support in terms of the pricing, you know, sometimes the community comes together and puts on a band. And it's pretty much free for the revelers, because they will come in and make their own costumes and stuff like that. But if it turns into a business where you're selling it and persons have to buy it, then, you know, there are lots of things that change. So you would have found that a lot of those community bands over the years started to dwindle away, because to run that business became more and more difficult. Okay. So you found that they got smaller and smaller. Sometimes even like Northern Mass that you mentioned, they're now more a junior band rather than a Grand Kadooment band. They would do Junior Kadooment, because they have, you know, in their community, they can continue to push that element, and a lot of the artisans there are from that community. So they actually work on the costumes and they sell them, and they run primarily, as Eddy said, they're driven by the prize money. It's not on the sale of the costumes, because most of these bands sell costumes under $100. And in this economy that we live in, that you can't turn a profit, you know, selling a costume at $100 or less, because you got people to pay, you got materials to buy, you know, there are lots of things. Sometimes you got to import things, and there's a lot. So they depend heavily on prices in order to keep it going year after year.
Okay, you've just mentioned importation. Mr. Abed, the importation of supplies during the crop over season, does that help with the Bridgetown revitalization? Perhaps the activity going on at the port?
Well, again, there are two different types of imports, and we mentioned this earlier. The larger bands have to import raw materials, costumes from the very, very cheapest source it can, and that's China. So the larger bands all import out of China now, to some extent ready, finished costumes. Yes, there's still some work to be done locally, but the vast majority in many of the bands has been done in China. It's boxed, packaged, and shipped into Barbados. So there is activity coming through the port for that. There are distributors selling food, alcohol, various products that are consumed more during the crop over season than in other calendar months in the year. So that also increases activity in the port. And then there are the retailers, whether you're large, small, vendor, it all has to come into Barbados somehow. So it comes through the ports, and they're all trying to pitch towards selling not only the local individual, but the visitor who is here. So there's a lot of that going on as well. It's busy. You know, Barbados is busy during the month of July and for at least the first 2 weeks of August. And to the point about community bands, you know, by and large, through the years, I found that these community bands happens to be an individual that's talented in craft, that's talented in getting people together, but that person has to become one who does everything. So they have to make sure they manage the money. They have to make sure they get people to come in and make the costumes. They have to get it on the road. They have to arrange food. They have to, and it really is a difficult task if you don't have other people or some kind of structure organization to be able to assist you, because it becomes too much, and you find a lot of them say it's just not easy.
They just burn out.
They burn out. Absolutely.
Burn out.
So, you know, don't neglect that you need to have some kind of structure. Most of the bands that are successful have a structure, have people in place, because it's a business.
Okay. We're taking a break here now, and we're coming back with more of The People's Business.
There is a saying, you can find a Bajan anywhere. Are you a Bajan living abroad? Or do you know of one who has migrated to another country? Well, we at Morning Barbados would love to have you or them on our Bajan Afar segment. Share your amazing stories, experiences, and how you have adapted to a new culture. Send us an email to morningbarbados@cbc.vb. And together we will travel the world.
Some ask, what makes Barbados so special? We at Morning Barbados say it's you, our exceptional youth. You are talented, resilient, and inspirational. You are the epitome of the Barbadian spirit, testing the boundaries of your creativity. If you are an entrepreneur, artist, baker, designer, author, or have done anything you think should be highlighted, email us at morningbarbados@cbc.bb. Let us show the world our exceptional Bajan youth.
The Ministry of Youth Sports and Community Empowerment's Bridges television series is back. Join us every Wednesday at 8 p.m. with a repeat on
Welcome back to The People's Business. Tonight we're talking crop over, culture and commerce. And before we went to the break, we were talking about the commercial aspect of a band, putting structure into the band, and, you know, band leaders looking to earn a living at this time of year out of crop over. Before we carry on with the discussion, we're going to take this caller who's on the line. Good night, caller.
Yes, hi, great night, Stacey. How are you doing?
Good night, Kamal.
I'm very thank you for taking my call. God bless you. Yes, good evening to the panel. This question is to Mr. Abed. Good night.
Good night.
Yes, sir. One about making Bridgetown the first town or the first city in the Caribbean to be a smart city, where you level it up in terms of we're trying to make it already green for the 2035 green economy, but really make it, a smart city in terms of giving it a 24-hour work day, giving it a schedule where the people can really, and this leads on to the second question, to Mr. Bryan Payne, the president of the Masqueraders.
Bryan Worrell.
I'm sorry, Bryan Worrell. Thank you very much, Stacey. I appreciate it. What can we do for the climate change in terms of crop over? Outside it's getting a lot hotter, and alcohol and the heat doesn't mix very well, sorry to say. So what about making it at the beach? What about putting crop over in terms of leveling it up, letting the masqueraders who cannot swim be on boats, but those who can swim be on the water edge, walking all around Barbados? I hear they're talking about making crop over 2 days. And my final question for the panel before I go, this is for any one of the two. If you could see Mr. Worrell, sorry for calling your name wrong. What can we do in terms of merging the city and crop over, in terms of making an atmosphere, the office atmosphere, an atmosphere of culture where you make crop over, or you make the Bridgetown an atmosphere of culture for the carnival, in terms of giving it a color and a feel, giving it a real advertising, marketing level up spruce, where you make the colors of the town in relation to the flag. I know we do it for Christmas, I know we do it for Independence, but doing it all year round. Thank you very much, God bless.
All right, let me start with his last question first. You do see a change in most businesses around Barbados around crop over season. I personally get calls as early as May to any spare pieces I have, old back parts, head pieces, showcase windows. Banks want things, every single function. They're asking, as the crop over season gets there, they want to make sure their lobbies show the carnival aspect in the lobbies, etc. So I do see that happening already, where there is a change. You see different showcase windows. My band is personally in Norman Center on Broad Street, right? So we are active in the mall. We do showcase around Bridgetown. All that we do showcases in Kia Shepherd. We walk Swan Street with costumes. So we do a change at this time of the year in terms of businesses to make that scene. The other thing about the climate change aspect, we are the only carnival that we do crop over that ends on a beach. So we already do that. We end on a beach where once your band gets down the road early enough, you get all the revelers running to the water already, and they get to do that for 4 days morning. We end on the beach again, and you see the sunrise on Brandon's and Brighton Beach, right? So we do already have those things happening here, which we can take a little bit more advantage of. I know there was talks at some points of having a final beach event at the end of the jump, if we want to do a climatic kind of event on the beach for either 4 day morning or for Grand Kaduma. So we are already tied into the whole aspect of taking in what we have, naturally on the coast.
Okay, and making Bridgetown a smart city?
I've been around long enough that I've heard many ideas. Not more than 4 or 5 years ago, I know that one of the large telephone companies wanted to provide free Wi-Fi in the city. They have limited where it's available, but the idea was that the commercial footprint, especially where tourists are, because this sort of could monetize, if somebody could get on with free Wi-Fi, you would have ads, advertising, whatever you wanted to pitch to the tourists. And it has started, but it's very limited. It's been mooted to put meters on the side of the road. I don't know if you traveled at all recently, but now there's no longer a meter that you feed. There is a QR code that you scan, and then you go online and give them your credit card, and that's how that works. So there are a few ideas out there, and we would embrace them. I will tell you that over the next 3 to 5 years, there is something like $400 million that's going to be spent in Bridgetown. Two of the major projects have already started. The Carlisle Bay redevelopment and the Hyatt, both of which have started, both of which will take 3 years to complete. We're talking about structures that will not only bring people to visit, but bring people to live. We're talking about structures where they will invite many Barbadian type retailers to come in. One of them is talking about putting a mini museum. They want to have interactive stuff. So the type of attractions in the city will change and will attract more people. The truth is, and I don't think most Barbadians are ready for this, the city we have today will not be the city in 5 years' time. It is going to pitch to a different clientele. It's going to, you're going to find the rum shop might be replaced with a coffee shop. Mm-hmm. You're going to find a lot of these outdoor cafes come in because that is the type of thing that these developments are pitching towards. The city is going to change. I'm confident, and I know your caller said he's been hearing about this for years, as I have, but nothing before its time. Finally, there's significant money, non-government money, significant private sector money going into the city, which will make a huge difference. We're not going to see it today.
Okay.
So we're 3 to 5 years down the road.
We have a caller on the line. Caller, kindly go ahead.
Yes, good evening to the panel. I just want to agree and disagree with some of the comments. I really do think that, yes, the market is calling for the beads and the feathers and the skin peas, but then do not brand it as culture or heritage, because it isn't. I watched Killy's Kadooman yesterday, and I have to take my hats off to the Bandleaders who brought things to do with culture and heritage. And I hope that one day that these same people in the Killy's Kadooman and the Bandleaders can take it over to the adult section. Yes, you can portray it in a different way, not like what we did yesterday. But I don't think, if we are saying that crop over is our culture, that's what we are saying, we are going to be depicting things like the Brazilian mask, etc., the beads and the feathers. So you have to make a decision, because I still do think, Mr. Abed said, that you can have some element in the band that depicts something of our heritage way back. But I am one that believes that if we are trying to preserve, that's the big word there, to preserve our culture, we have to initiate it somewhere in the crop over. Because it's not a carnival. And I'm hearing some people calling it a carnival. It's not a carnival. So I'm saying that I really would like to see down the road that the creatives can tie over some of the heritage into, even if it's beads and feathers. Because, yes, the people have to live, and, you know, it is what the market is calling for. So that's my intake.
Thank you, caller. Mr. Worrell, this caller is very passionate about our cultural, intangible heritage.
And again, I've said this many times. There still are bands out here today that are still representing traditional mass. There still are bands. What happens is these bands get drowned out because the larger party bands make the most noise. They have the biggest digital footprint, social media footprint. So when you're researching crop over and crop over bands, you tend to maybe find or stumble upon those. But we still have Betty West still produces bands. Kevin Small still produces bands. There's Soca Spirits is a band that we have. We have Quincy Jones now coming back into the fold after being away for a number of years. He used to do Youth Explosion. He's now back with a new brand of a band. This is another traditional band as well. So there are bands out there. I would agree there are less than there were before, because crop over was then a more traditional type of masquerade. Partying was brought into it with the Paul Befores and, you know, Beige and some of those bands that came in at that point. But they now dominate the market. But to say that bands are not, you know, producing and telling stories through their costumes, I don't agree. I think it still happens, but the scale in which it happens is smaller now. So which makes it almost invisible for you to see it unless you know where to go look.
Well, I believe this is what the caller is pointing to. she would like to see the tradition scale up so that you don't have to go looking.
And again, it doesn't have to mean that traditional means a lot of material, or you can make it, and bands do that. They make it in a way. There was a band that on first glance you would have said is another party band, but when you looked at what the designer designed for the band, it did tell a story. It came out through, when you looked at the theme the person had and how they portrayed the band, then it was. But some people look at these things with a one clean slate. As soon as they see a bikini, oh, it's not a traditional costume.
But let's hear
right?
what this caller on the line thinks. Caller, go ahead.
Good evening to you and your panel and to our listeners of story. Crop over supposed to fit in the slow period of our main income earner tourism. And the customer will be regional, I perceive. What about the cost of getting to this country? Have you guys looked at that to make it as economical as possible for persons coming from the region or other places to come here? Because the cheaper the fare, you have more money to spend. People don't listen.
I think we lost that caller.
I could kind of. We've had this conversation before about the cost of flights. As me and Eddy were talking before the show started, there will be no empty seats coming to Barbados in the next 2 weeks, right? So if flights are being booked and the airlines are also in business, if there was a drop off in arrivals, then we could have a leverage point with the airlines to maybe get them to drop the fare. But if the tickets are being bought, right, it's going to be hard for them to do anything there because people are still coming. The issue with Masquerade not maybe dropping off in numbers isn't anything to do with arrivals of overseas persons coming in to participate. It's in the local element, participating and the disposable income that they have.
Why are they dropping off? You've mentioned income. What else?
That's a major factor. I don't think it's anything more. I think if you look at the events surrounding the Crop Over Festival, they're well attended. You see sold outs for many events every week, every weekend, breakfast parties, all inclusives. There's an event on tonight. More than 10,000 people are going to be at that event. So people do have some disposable income to spend, but when it comes to a band, the band now is hundreds of dollars. A ticket is $100 or less. Which is easier for a person to say, hey, let me maybe just go take in an event or all-inclusive party, and then by the time they get down to our climatic event, the funds wouldn't be there.
Okay. Does it have to be as expensive as it is?
Right, that takes us back to our previous point. The bands are finding the most economical ways. We lobbied the NCF over the years. They have listened to us. We did get concessions that we can now import duty-free. Once we're cultural practitioners, it does help us to bring our prices down. A lot of the bands, including mine, we have worked in prices, we work group specials. We do a lot to do that.
We're going to go to a break, and when we come back, we're going to explore the cost of putting those bands on the road.
God will not give you a job. God will not call you to do something and then not give you the capacity to have it, to make it happen. He will give you the resources. He'll give you the people. Not only will He equip you with ideas, but He will equip you with favor, as He did Nehemiah.
Turn on the latest episode of Infinite Possibilities, only on CBC TV8, every Sunday at 1:30 p.m., sponsored by Covenant Life Teaching Center.
Welcome to Nature's Discount, the ultimate health food store. At Nature's Discount, we have thousands of quality products at great prices.
Hi guys, Dottie here with Nature's Discount, and today we are talking about Solar Ray Microbiome Probiotics and why you should be taking them.
And we have well over 3,000 amazing products to help you get healthy.
For your health tips, tune in to CBC TV8 every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday for Nature's Discount. sponsored by Get Healthy Incorporated.
Week after week, Scald presents exciting reports and documentaries on the most varied topics of our time. Spectacular developments and innovations, lifestyle and trends of tomorrow, mobility and tourism, health news, highlights from art and culture. Each contribution grabs the viewer with extraordinary images and stories and takes him into fascinating worlds which he experiences.
Welcome back to the People's Business. Tonight we're discussing crop over culture and commerce. Mr. Bryan Worrell, tell us, what are the challenges of putting a band of revelers on the road? You've been doing it now in the last few years for 3 bands.
Yeah.
You have the children, you have Grand Kadooment, you also have 4-day morning, so you're well versed in what's happening.
Yeah, the cost, there are many challenges that you have. The cost, the market, change in the market, the cost of materials and different items that you need, even the cost of wages that you have to pay, the things you have to pay for.
Tell me quickly, what do you usually have to pay for?
You pay, all right, let's say for Grand Kadooment, you have the infrastructure, standard infrastructure. You need a truck, you need trucks, you need drivers, you need staff, you need bar staff, you need security, you need mobile restrooms. Some bands have coaches, many storage vehicles. So your standard infrastructure can run you anywhere between $40,000 to $50,000 just for the infrastructure to start there. Then you need product, so you need drinks, you need all the products that you have. Not talking about the costuming yet, but when you look at it, the band fee for a band in terms of what it costs to put a reveler on the road is somewhere around $400. That it just costs to manage that person for the day, give the meals, drinks, security, entertainment, $400 per person. Adding the cost of the costume on top of that, right? And then staff wages and stuff you have to pay. So the average band will cost anywhere about $200,000 in total revenue that you would need to get that band ready and prepared in terms of everything you need to spend.
Tell us about the assistance you're getting from government.
For the NCF, we do receive a subvention every year. We would have had some lobbying done up to this year for a slight increase, but standard is about $20,000 per band, whether large or small. The party bands this year got a bit more. They got $27,500 for the party bands because the party bands, we agreed to forego the judging. We wanted to make this new route that we're going on work, so we are trying to work on the pace and the flow a little bit more rather than sticking on stage and doing presentations and all that. We want to try to get the flow right so we can get this route that we really like to work. So the government does give us that subvention, some small little stipulations in terms of band numbers. You need to have a certain amount to get the second half of your subvention, where we get the first half in around May, and you get the second half after you've met the criteria.
Okay, Mr. Abed, can you shed some light on what sponsors are generally looking for in terms of getting into an arrangement to sponsor a crop over band?
So as you'd imagine, the sponsors are most concerned about size. The larger bands tend to get greater percentage of sponsorship because they have a more established social media. They tend to work more with promoting their bands, and because they have so many more people, patrons there, there's more eyes seeing the person's product. The smaller bands, sadly, don't necessarily have exposure to that. Hence, they're always saying that they need more sponsorship, and it's a chicken and egg. If the sponsor thinks that you're not going to do a good enough job with their product, you're not large enough, they're going to bypass you and go straight to a larger band. And in some instances, they go straight to the NCF.
Okay.
The NCF competes with the bands for sponsorship money.
I know we've had this discussion in the past about the NCF competing with the bands for sponsorship money. How do you think this should be resolved? And also, what should the smaller bands be saying to potential sponsors?
I'll say that I think that if the NCF does go but they do go to private sponsors and gain sponsorship. Their sponsorship is on a way bigger scale than the bands would go for. But what I always ask for is for there to be some trickle down, because on the ground level, if the NCF goes to a major sponsor and they get 200,000 in sponsorship, what impact does that have for every band? Are they giving the band's party paraphernalia with that sponsor that we can add to packages? You know, there must be some trickle down that the bands can also benefit from, because it doesn't make sense that these same people that we would love to sponsor us have already dipped into the pool with the NCF. It doesn't help us really in any way.
Small bands, what should they say to sponsors?
Small bands, there are ways that we can also counter that by coming together, because there's force in numbers. So if the smaller bands and all of us can sometimes come together and approach sponsors as a group, then it gives them more bang for the buck if they sponsor 5-6 bands together as a group. Absolutely. Who are willing to go under the same brand of that sponsor. Okay. Then the sponsor can maybe see it more viable.
Our time is fast running out and we have a caller on the line. Caller, kindly go ahead.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi. This Bryan Worrell, his costume was perfect. Keep up good work. Good quality. This is the first time random jump. Your costume.
I'm sorry, but we can hardly hear what you're saying, caller. Okay. So as we wrap up now this discussion about crop over balancing culture with commerce, tell us about the route that we have on for Grand Kadooment this year.
All right, the route remains the same as last year. The route is now starting in Bridgetown, which we're happy about. We had some challenges last year with a late start. There were some unforeseen things that occurred, but we are hoping for earlier start than usual. We're hoping for 8:30 start this year from Bridgetown. We're starting on Hink Street, going down to Princess Alice Highway. We're hoping to have judging somewhere around the Pelican area. Pelican has been redeveloped. It's a very nice area, attractive area. We want to take advantage of the scenic parts of that part of the road as well. And we'll traverse past Kensington up to Eagle Hall via President Kennedy Drive, and then we turn onto Black Rock, and the rest of the road remains as it is, has always been, Black Rock onto Mighty Granite Highway.
Okay, how many bands are expected on the road this year?
Well, we have 20 bands registered that are good to go. We had a few dropouts, so I think we are about 18 bands right now.
Okay, Mr. Abed, we're about to wrap up. What are your final words?
The festival has grown and commerce will play its part. Many of our members sponsor very many aspects of Kadooment, crop over, the tents, all the various bits that make up the season. So it's not to say that we're just enjoying revenue without playing our part. We do in fact sponsor. Yes, perhaps we can do more. I like Bryan's idea about the smaller bands coming together. I think that will make a big difference. And lastly, I really would like the authorities to look at a second day. We do need a second day just to give it that much more. I mean, we could even have an event that on the beach or something at that point in time. But yes, this is food for thought.
Last words from you, Mr. Worrell.
I just want to see Grand Kadooment be preserved as a climax for the festival. We've seen the decline, and we really want to get it back to the numbers that we had in the past. We want to work with the Barbadian public to get them on the road, so bands are willing to work discounts. I want them to come out there, search the social media platforms, reach out to us, and we can make sure that we get you on the road as affordable as possible.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. That was Bryan Worrell. He is the president of the Barbados Association of Masqueraders and Bandleaders, and Mr. Eddy Abed, representing the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industries, Bridgetown Revitalisation Committee. On behalf of our head of news and current affairs, Mr. Kent Jerson, thank you so much for joining. On behalf of the technical crew, thank you. I'm Stacey Russell, and I'm looking forward to hosting you again soon on The People's Business, Your Business.